Good afternoon and welcome to NYFP this afternoon. I'm joined by Kenny Polcari of ICAP. Hi Kenny, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, in today's trading session, we're seeing U.S. stocks higher again. It is the end of the second quarter and also the end of June. So heading into the upcoming quarter, what points are you paying attention to?
You're clearly going to be paying attention to the earnings. That's going to be the start of in a week and a half, the earnings season is going to start. Really, next Friday is going to start with the payroll number. That's going to be a number that everyone's looking at starting next week. But after that, it's clearly the focus is going to shift to earnings in the U.S. Kind of the global picture, I think, is going to settle down a little bit as long as Greece continues to move along at the pace it's moving along. There's going to be clearly some conversation about peripheral countries, whether it's Portugal, whether it's Ireland. They've already started talking about Portugal needing the same kind of a bailout that Greece is getting. So, that's certainly going to be around the periphery. But here in the U.S., the focus is clearly going to shift to earnings.
Well, ahead of the earnings reports as well as non-farm payrolls, I do want to ask you about sector. Obviously, investors will be paying attention to bigger factors, but in terms of sectors, what are you staying away from and what are you sticking to?
I think industrials, infrastructure stocks are really going to do well going forward because, Caterpillar, Deere, names like that are really going to do well. I think technology is going to do well, but I have to tell you, I think you have to be cautious going into the early part of July because I think this market, we've had this great run up in the last 4 days. I think the market's going to take a breather, reassess. I think it's got to actually pull back a little bit. So you have to play the game. You have to be very nimble. If you're a short-term kind of a day investor, day trader person, short-term, you have to be very nimble. If you're a long-term investor, I think, pay attention. You start to get clarity on the earnings, and then you figure out the sectors you want to be in. But, infrastructure names, technology names, I think are certainly safe bets. I think financial names are safe bets also.
Well, Kenny, last but not least, before we wrap it up, since you mentioned short-term as well as long-term, what is your forecast for crude, and how have you figured that into your overall strategy?
Crude, that's very, very interesting because there are some people that thought crude was going $150 a barrel. I don't think at the moment that's where it's going. I think the fact that we've seen crude back off the way it is tells you that, that it's worried about our economy. Are we struggling? Are we in a soft patch, or is it something a little bit longer? I think crude probably settles back in around the $100, $105 level, unless we have this all of a sudden explosive growth in the second half that everyone seems to be talking about. I don't see that yet, but I think certainly 90 is a floor on crude, and I think it's probably 100, 105 is probably where it's going to settle.
Okay, Kenny, as always, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule, and thanks for your insight.
Thanks for having me.